A hot meal and some warm company. Simple but life-changing pleasures. But as the cost of living rises higher and higher, many of our elderly are struggling. More than 1.5 million are now living in food poverty, and that number's set to rise steeply. I've come to an age-concerned lunch club in West London to meet Danny, an 87-year-old retired mechanic, Harry, an 88-year-old World War II veteran, and Raina, an 82-year-old widower, to find out how life has changed for them over the years.
With the supermarkets, I think they're taking us for a ride, you know, because one minute they're putting their prices down, lower, and the next minute it's going up higher. So you don't always know what the right price is, you know. So, I mean, you only got a certain amount of money to spend.
It's a very hard thing these days for people, the price of things. You go to one shop, the price might be dropped there. You go to that one, and the price goes up a little bit. You never know what you want to buy.
The people who brought this country along are being neglected badly, and I think it's disgusting the way things are left, to be honest and truth with you.
Shocking new figures make Britain look more Dickensian than 21st century. Almost a quarter of pensioners have had to cut back on food, and more than 1 million are malnourished. Lunch clubs like this one already provide an essential service, but over the next few years the demand for places is set to surge because there'll be more older people living in poverty. They'll be paying an extra £300 for their annual food bill, and that's more than any other age group. As the chill sets in, the choice faced by many pensioners this winter will be stark: food or fuel.
Many, particularly elderly households, will be faced with that choice of do they miss a meal, or do they cut back on their food spending, or do they look to not put on their heating? And that is the reality for, we think, something like 1 million or between 1 and 1.5 million households.
Harry, Danny and Raina can face their futures with confidence. It's a shame the same can't be said for all of our elderly. Ashish Joshi, Sky News.
Well, we're joined now by Anjem Choudary of Islam for UK and by Majid Nawaz from the counter-extremism think tank, the Quilliam Foundation. I see in your statement today that this decision, in your judgment, is a victory for Islam and for Muslims. How does that work?
Well, absolutely, because if you believe in something, then it should be good for all times and places. The government advocate democracy and freedom. Supposedly, their own soldiers are dying for freedom and democracy in Afghanistan. And yet, when we expose their foreign policy, as we did with the mere suggestion of having a procession in Wootton Bassett, suddenly you find that freedom dissipates and you have dictatorship.
And how's the campaign to move Britain over to Sharia law coming along?
Well, this is in the hands of God. We do our best to propagate Islam. Well, of course it is. I think many people will see that democracy and freedom is no good for the British, no good for Afghanistan, and in fact, we need an alternative. Unlike man-made law, the Sharia is not something which gives you a right today to take it away tomorrow. It's good in all times and places.
What is
Siri, to make this an issue of freedom and democracy is absurd. Anjem, you haven't had a hair on your body touched by this government or this country. You haven't spent a day in prison. You haven't suffered one bit for your views. You're allowed to sit here right now because of freedom and democracy. In your so-called caliphate, you'd have me killed, wouldn't you? Wouldn't you have me... Am I an apostate that deserves death?
Oh, well, I mean, obviously, Majid Nawaz is part of an apostate organisation called the Quilliam Foundation. He's paid by Alan Johnson and Gordon Brown to say what he's saying.
Anjem, how many thousands of pounds a year do you get on benefits?
This man gets £2 million with his and his organisation in order to fight against Islam or Muslims.
Look, he's asked you two questions. Firstly, under your caliphate, he would be executable, would he?
He would be judged by an Islamic judge, and then after that...
And his second question, his second question, did you hear that?
Repeat the second.
How many thousands of pounds are you receiving from the British government?
Repeat the second.
How many thousands of pounds are you receiving from the British government?
Repeat the second.
How many thousands of pounds are you receiving from the British government every year on dole money? On dole money.
How many? Are
you on the dole?
Are you on the dole? At the end of the day, when you lose the argument, it's very easy.
So now I'll ask you again: have you had a hair on your body touched by freedom and democracy?
For both of you, obviously, and the 5-minute clip that you played here, I'll tell you something. All of you are in one camp, the camp of non-Islam, against the camp of the Muslims.
So what's the verdict?
What the Muslims out there will see, what the Muslims out there will see, is that you have already played a clip 5 minutes long in order order to
Can you answer the
demonise
question?
the Muslims, there's a bunch...
What is gained by banning an organisation? You may think he's talking nonsense, but what's gained by stopping him talking nonsense?
On this very show,
A lot of money by Anjem Choudary.
Okay, hang on.
On this very show, I oppose the government in banning Hizb ut-Tahrir. There's a clear difference, even though that was government policy at the time. And the difference is that there are over 20 members or affiliates of his group that are serving in prison on terrorism offences. I met members of his group in a Lashkar-e-Taiba training camp in Pakistan. These people describe the 9/11 attackers as the Magnificent 19.
We've got the list.
Well, no,
these people believe.
These people believe to say that
the blood
by the government.
These people,
that's the only reason he's saying
Anjem, allow me to finish one thing. Please.
Hang on, look, my friend.
Listen,
Majid, you are known
I've
as
known
Majid
you for over
Bakassia
15
because you
years.
speak rubbish.
I've known you for over 15 years.
No, I've never met you before.
Yes, you have. You are my solicitor in the East Ham murder case.
What are you talking about? What are you
You're my
talking
solicitor.
about? What are you talking about, Majid?
Why are you not my solicitor in the East Ham murder case?
You cannot deny that there are, as he says, members of your organisation convicted of crimes serving sentences.